The Galactic Imperium had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. It was a vast empire of peace and order. 847 different species lived under its laws. They traded with each other. They shared knowledge. They had forgotten what true war looked like. The Imperium believed it had seen everything the universe could offer. It had mapped millions of star systems. It had cataloged every type of planet, every form of life, every possible way that intelligent beings could evolve. The scientists of the Imperium were proud of their knowledge. They thought they understood how civilizations developed. They were wrong. Commander Seleth Vor of the Vethrani hegemony was bored. His survey vessel, the Endless Horizon, had been exploring the outer rim of the galaxy for 3 years. They had found nothing but dead rocks and gas giants, no new species, no valuable resources, nothing worth reporting to the Council. Seleth Vor was a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Vethrani, were known for their patience and careful thinking, but even Vethrani patience had limits. He wanted to go home. "Commander," said his science officer, a small creature named Plix, who belonged to a species that looked like walking crystals, "I am detecting electromagnetic signals from an uncharted system." Seleth Vor looked up from his console. "What kind of signals?" "Primitive radio waves, very crude. The pattern suggests artificial origin." This was interesting. Finding a new intelligent species was rare. Most species that developed radio technology were still thousands of years away from space travel. They were usually easy to study from a distance. "Set a course," Seleth Vor ordered. "Let us see what we have found." The Endless Horizon traveled for 2 days through the empty void between stars. When they arrived at the system, Seleth Vor ordered a full scan. The results confused him. "There are 9 planets," Plix reported. "The 3rd planet from the star shows signs of advanced life. But, Commander, there is something strange." "Show me." The main screen lit up with images. Seleth Vor saw a blue and green world, beautiful in its own way. But that was not what caught his attention. Around the planet's single moon, there was a field of debris, broken metal, shattered hulls, the remains of spacecraft. "What happened there?" Seleth Vor asked. Plix worked at his console for several minutes. When he spoke again, his crystal body had turned a darker shade. This meant he was disturbed. "Commander, the debris appears to be the result of combat. These beings have been fighting each other in space." Seleth Vor felt his stomach turn. War was not unknown to the Imperium, but civilized species fought wars with rules. They fought over territory or resources. They did not destroy each other completely, and they certainly did not fight wars before they had even left their home system. "How advanced are they?" he asked. "That is what disturbs me, Commander. Based on the radio signals and the technology in the debris, I estimate they developed powered flight approximately 150 years ago." 150 years? That is impossible. I have checked the calculations 3 times. They went from basic flying machines to space warfare in 150 years. Seleth Vor sat down heavily. The Vethrani had taken 6,000 years to make that same journey. Most species took at least 2,000. 150 years was not just fast, it was unnatural. "Continue scanning," he ordered. "I want to know everything about these creatures." Over the next several days, the crew of the Endless Horizon studied the blue planet. What they learned made them more afraid with each passing hour. The beings called themselves humans. They were soft creatures with only 2 arms and 2 legs. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no armor, no venom. By all logic, they should have been prey animals on their world. Instead, they had conquered their entire planet. They had done this through violence on a scale that shocked the Vethrani crew. The humans had fought thousands of wars throughout their history. They had killed millions of their own kind. They had developed weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. But that was not the worst part. "Commander," Plix said one morning, his voice shaking, "I have finished analyzing their weapons development. You need to see this." The screen showed a timeline. It started with simple weapons made of stone and wood, then metal swords and spears, then explosives, then weapons that fired metal projectiles at high speed. And then, in a span of just 40 years, they had split the atom. "They created nuclear weapons," Plix whispered. "They learned to release the energy that holds matter together, and they used it. They dropped these weapons on their own cities. Seleth Vor stared at the images of destruction. 2 cities completely erased, hundreds of thousands of humans killed in an instant, and this had happened before they had even achieved planetary unity. They are insane, he said. There is more, Commander. After they created these weapons, they built more. Many more. At one point, they had enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet several times over. Why would any species do this? I do not know, but they did not use them. They pointed these weapons at each other for decades, but they never fired them. They call this period the Cold War. Seleth Vor tried to understand this. A species that built weapons capable of ending all life on their world, then chose not to use them. It made no sense. Were they brave or foolish? Wise or mad? What happened to the weapons? He asked. Most of them still exist. They have reduced the numbers, but they still have enough to destroy themselves many times over. The commander stood and walked to the viewing window. The blue planet hung in the darkness, looking peaceful from this distance. But he now knew what lived on its surface. Creatures that had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Creatures that had split the atom before they had learned to live in peace. We need to contact the Council, he said. This is beyond our authority to handle. The message Seleth Vor sent to the Imperium Council was classified at the highest level. Only the leaders of the most powerful species were allowed to read it. We have discovered a new intelligent species in system designation 7749 Gamma, the message began. They call themselves humans. I recommend immediate quarantine of their system. These beings are the most dangerous we have ever encountered. The message went on to describe what the Vethrani had learned. The wars, the weapons, the impossible speed of their technological development. But it was the final paragraph that caused the most concern. The humans have not yet developed faster than light travel. Our scientists estimate they will achieve this capability within 50 to 100 years. If we do not act before then, they will spread across the galaxy. Based on their history, I believe this would be catastrophic for all civilized species. I recommend we consider all options, including planetary sterilization. The Council received this message during a routine session. Within hours, every member had read it. Within days, the largest emergency gathering in Imperium history had been called. Representatives from all 847 member species crowded into the Great Chamber on the Imperium's capital world. The noise was deafening as thousands of different beings discussed the human problem. High Chancellor Morath Prime called for silence. He was an ancient being, his species one of the founders of the Imperium. He had seen many crises in his long life, but he had never seen the Council this afraid. We have all read Commander Seleth Vor's report, he said. We have verified his findings. The humans are real. The threat they pose is real. We must decide what to do. A representative from the Krix Collective raised one of his many limbs. The Krix were insect-like beings known for their logical thinking. The solution is obvious, he said. We must destroy them before they can threaten us. 100 years is not long. We should act now while they cannot fight back. Many in the chamber made sounds of agreement, but others were not so sure. We cannot simply destroy an entire species, said Ambassador Yethri of the Soft Ones. Her people were known for their compassion. They have done nothing to us. They do not even know we exist. They wage war against themselves, the Kree representative replied. They have nuclear weapons. They will turn those weapons on us the moment they discover us. You do not know that. Look at their history. They have never known true peace. Every generation fights. Every generation kills. It is in their nature. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted immediate military action. Others wanted to wait and observe. A few suggested trying to make peaceful contact. Finally, High Chancellor Morath Prime raised his hand for silence. We will not make this decision today, he said. The question is too important. I am forming a special committee to study the humans in detail. We will observe them. We will learn everything we can about them. And then when we truly understand what they are, we will decide their fate. The committee was formed. Observation stations were built around the human system, hidden from their primitive sensors. For the next 50 years, the Imperium watched humanity with a mixture of fear and fascination. What they saw only deepened their confusion. The humans continued to fight wars, but they also created beautiful art. They wrote music that moved even alien listeners. They built structures of stunning complexity. They cared for their sick and elderly. They showed love and kindness to each other. They were violent and gentle, cruel and compassionate, destroyers and creators. They were a species of contradictions. I do not understand them, Plick said to Selethvor during one of their many discussions. The commander had become the Imperium's leading expert on humans. How can the same species produce both mass murderers and those who sacrifice their lives to save strangers? I have stopped trying to understand them, Selethvor replied. I only try to predict them, and I cannot do that either. The humans continued to advance. They sent more missions to their moon. They built a permanent station in orbit around their planet. They sent probes to explore their solar system, and they continued to fight. Small wars, large wars, wars that seemed to have no purpose. But they also continued to build new technologies, new medicines, new ways of communicating across their world. They are going to reach the stars soon, Selethvor warned the council. We need to make a decision. The council debated again. This time the argument was even more heated. Some wanted to destroy humanity before it was too late. Others pointed out that the humans had not actually done anything to the Imperium. In the end, a compromise was reached. They would make contact. They would offer humanity a place in the Imperium, but there would be strict conditions, limitations on human expansion, controls on their weapons, rules that would keep them contained. And if they refuse, someone asked. High Chancellor Moreth Prime looked at the blue planet on the screen. Such a small world. Such a dangerous species. Then we will do what we must, he said, for the safety of all civilized beings. The decision was made. The Imperium would reach out to humanity. They would try to bring these strange, violent, creative creatures into the galactic community. None of them knew that this decision would change everything. None of them could have predicted what would happen when humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. And none of them understood the most important truth about humans, a truth that would only become clear much later. Humans were not just violent. They were not just creative. They were not just contradictory. Humans were survivors. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived wars and famines. They had survived everything their planet and each other could throw at them. And each time they survived, they came back stronger. The Imperium saw humanity's violence and was afraid. They should have been looking at humanity's resilience instead, because the galaxy was about to face a threat that would make human violence look like a children's game. And when that threat came, the Imperium would learn a lesson it would never forget. Sometimes the most dangerous species in the universe is exactly what you need to survive. But that was still years away. For now, the Imperium prepared its diplomatic mission. They chose their best ambassador. They prepared their offers and their threats. And on the blue planet called Earth, humanity went about its daily life, completely unaware that everything was about to change. The stars were waiting, and humanity was about to answer their call. Ambassador Keith Marai had spent her entire career preparing for difficult assignments. She belonged to a species called the Illuminated Synod. Her people were tall and thin, with skin that changed color based on their emotions. They were known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and patience. Keith Marai had earned a reputation as a specialist in what the Imperium called aberrant species integration. This meant she was sent to deal with species that did not fit the normal patterns, species that were violent or strange or difficult to understand. She had never failed a mission. She had brought 17 different species into the Imperium. Some had been hostile, some had been suspicious, but she had always found a way to make them see reason. When the council called her to discuss the human assignment, she felt confident. How difficult could one small species be? That confidence did not last long. The council gave her access to all the observation data collected over 50 years. She spent 3 months studying humans before her mission began. Each day, her skin grew darker with worry. They make no sense, she told her assistant, a young male of her species named Veth Sol. Look at this. In 1 decade, they fight a war that kills 50 million of their own kind. In the next decade, they send aid to their former enemies to help them rebuild. Why would they do this? Perhaps they felt guilt for the destruction, Veth Sol suggested. Perhaps. But then look at this. The same nations that sent aid also built more weapons, more powerful weapons. They prepared for the next war, even while healing the wounds of the last one. Veth Sol's skin turned pale blue. showing his confusion. They expected more war? They always expect more war. But here is what I do not understand. They also built hospitals, schools, museums. They created art and music and literature. They explored their world and their minds. They did all of this while preparing for destruction. She stood and walked to her window. The stars stretched out before her, peaceful and eternal. Every species I have studied follows a pattern, she said. Violent species stay violent until they destroy themselves. Peaceful species stay peaceful. But humans are both. They are violent and peaceful at the same time. I do not know how to approach them. What will you do? The only thing I can do. I will meet them. I will talk to them. And I will try to understand them before it's too late. The diplomatic ship left 3 weeks later. It was a large vessel designed to impress primitive species. The Imperium wanted humanity to understand how powerful their new potential allies were. Keth Marai watched the blue planet grow larger on her screen as they approached. It was beautiful in a simple way. Blue oceans, green and brown land, white clouds swirling across its surface, and somewhere down there, 8 billion humans went about their daily lives, unaware that visitors were coming. The first contact was carefully planned. The Imperium had learned from past mistakes. They knew that sudden appearances could cause panic. So they started slowly. First, they made their ship visible to human sensors. They let the humans detect them and track their approach. This caused exactly the panic the Imperium expected. Human military forces went on high alert. Governments held emergency meetings. Religious leaders gave speeches about the end times. But underneath the panic, something else was happening. Something that surprised Keth Marai. The humans were excited. Not all of them, of course. Many were afraid. But a significant number of humans seemed thrilled by the idea of alien contact. They gathered in public places, hoping to see the ship. They created artwork and music to welcome the visitors. They debated what questions to ask and what gifts to give. This is not normal behavior for a species facing first contact, Keth Marai noted in her log. Most species show only fear. Humans show fear mixed with curiosity. They are afraid of us, but they also want to meet us. They want to learn about us. After 1 week of letting humans adjust to the idea of alien visitors, Keth Marai transmitted a message. It was simple, designed to be easily translated. We come in peace. We wish to talk. We bring no weapons. The response came within hours. A group of human leaders had been chosen to represent their species. They invited the aliens to land at a neutral location. Keth Marai chose to bring only a small team. She wanted the humans to feel safe. She wanted them to see that the Imperium was not a threat. The shuttle landed in an empty field surrounded by human military forces. This was expected. Keth Marai would have done the same thing in their position. She stepped out of the shuttle and saw humans up close for the first time. They were smaller than she had expected, shorter than most Imperium species. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink. They wore artificial coverings on their bodies to protect against their environment. They looked fragile, weak, easy to break. But Keth Marai knew better than to judge by appearances. These weak-looking creatures had conquered their world. They had split the atom. They had survived disasters that would have destroyed other species. She walked forward slowly, her hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. A group of humans walked toward her. At the front was a tall female with gray hair and serious eyes. "I am Ambassador Keth Marai of the Galactic Imperium," she said. Her translation device converted her words into the human language. "I bring greetings from 847 species who live among the stars." The human female nodded. "I am Secretary General Amara Okonkwo. I speak for the people of Earth. We welcome you to our world." The formal greetings continued for several minutes. Both sides were careful and polite. Both sides were also studying each other, looking for signs of threat or opportunity. When the formalities were complete, Keth Marai was led to a building that humans had prepared for the discussions. It was simple but clean. The humans had clearly tried to make it comfortable for their visitors. Over the next several weeks, Keth Marai learned more about humans than 50 years of observation had taught the Imperium. She learned about their history, not just the wars and violence, but also the times of peace and progress. She learned about their great thinkers and leaders. She learned about their religions and philosophies. She learned about their art and science. She learned about their fears. Humans were afraid of many things: death, disease, war, loneliness, the unknown. They lived with these fears every day, but she also learned about their hopes. Humans dreamed of a better future. They dreamed of peace and prosperity. They dreamed of exploring the stars and meeting other species. They dreamed of becoming something greater than they were. "You are a species of dreamers," Keth Marai said one day during a private meeting with Secretary General Okonkwo. Amara smiled. It was an expression that showed happiness in humans. "We prefer to think of ourselves as optimists. We believe tomorrow can be better than today. Even after everything you have been through, the wars, the suffering, especially because of that, we have seen the worst we can do to each other. We have looked into the darkness, and we chose to keep moving toward the light." Keth Marai was silent for a moment. Her skin shifted through several colors as she processed this. "Your history shows a pattern of violence," she said carefully. "The Imperium is concerned that you will bring this violence to the stars." "That is a fair concern," Amara admitted. "We have done terrible things to each other. I will not pretend otherwise. But we have also done wonderful things. We have created beauty and knowledge and love. We are not just our worst moments. The Imperium must think of the safety of all its members." "I understand. And I will tell you something honestly, Ambassador. If you had come to us 100 years ago, you would have been right to fear us. We were divided. We were suspicious. We might have tried to take your technology by force. And now?" Amara looked out the window at the sky. "Now we are different, not perfect. We still fight. We still make mistakes. But we have learned. We have grown. We are ready to join something larger than ourselves." "How can you be sure?" The human leader turned back to face the alien ambassador. Her eyes were calm and confident. "Because when you appeared in our sky, our first thought was not how to destroy you. It was how to welcome you. That would not have been true a century ago." Keth Marai filed her first major report to the Council after 6 weeks on Earth. "The humans are not what we expected," she wrote. "They are violent, yes, but they are also capable of great kindness and wisdom. They have flaws that concern me, but they also have strengths that impress me." She described what she had learned about human resilience. This was the quality that surprised her most. "They have faced multiple near-extinction events in the past century alone," she wrote. "Nuclear war was nearly started several times. Diseases swept across their world. Their climate began to change in dangerous ways. And each time they adapted. They found solutions. They survived." She gave specific examples. When a great disease spread across their world, they developed a treatment in less than 1 year. When their climate threatened their food supply, they created new ways to grow crops. When their economies collapsed, they rebuilt them. "Other species avoid disaster," she wrote. "Humans seem to use disaster as motivation. Each crisis makes them work harder. Each threat brings them together. I have never seen anything like it." She also wrote about their creativity. Humans did not just solve problems. They found new problems to solve. They were never satisfied with the current state of things. They always wanted more. "They call this progress," she wrote. "They believe that standing still is the same as moving backward. They are constantly pushing forward, even when they do not know where they are going." The Council read her report with great interest. Some members were reassured by her findings. Others remained suspicious. "She has been influenced by them," one Council member said. "Humans are known to be manipulative. She is seeing what they want her to see." "Or perhaps she is seeing the truth," another member replied. "Perhaps we were too quick to judge them." The debate continued. Meanwhile, Keth Marai kept learning. She visited human cities and saw their architecture. Great towers of glass and steel reaching toward the sky. Underground tunnels carrying millions of people to their destinations. Bridges spanning wide rivers. It was impressive for such a young species. She visited their hospitals and saw how they cared for the sick. Human medicine was primitive by Imperium standards, but the dedication of their healers was genuine. They worked long hours to save lives. They cried when they lost patients. They celebrated when they succeeded. She visited their schools and saw how they taught their young. Human children were curious and energetic. They asked endless questions. They wanted to know everything about everything. "Why are you so tall?" a young girl asked Keth Marai during one school visit. My species evolved on a planet with lower gravity than yours, Keth Marai explained. We did not need as much strength to stand upright. What do you eat? A mixture of proteins and nutrients similar to what you call vegetables. Do you have any pets? Keth Marai had to consult her translation device for that word. You mean animals that live with you for companionship? No, my species does not have that custom. The girl looked sad. That sounds lonely. It was a small moment, a child expressing sympathy for an alien being, but it stayed with Keth Marai for a long time. As weeks turned into months, the ambassador began to see humans differently. She still recognized their flaws, their violence, their tribalism, their tendency to act before thinking, but she also saw their potential, their creativity, their determination, their ability to change and grow. And she saw something else, something that worried her more than their violence ever had. Humans were hiding something. She could not prove it, but she felt it in every conversation with their leaders. A hint of something unsaid, a careful control of information. The humans were being friendly and cooperative, but they were not showing her everything. What are they hiding? She asked herself late one night. She thought about what she knew. Humans had developed nuclear weapons in an impossibly short time. They had built spacecraft and computers and medical technology at a rate that defied explanation. What else could they have created? What other technologies were they keeping secret? She did not know, and the not knowing worried her more than anything she had learned. Her final report to the council was cautious. I recommend we offer humanity conditional membership in the Imperium, she wrote. They have potential to be valuable allies, but they must be watched carefully. I believe they are hiding the full extent of their capabilities. She paused before writing her final paragraph. The humans call their planet Earth. In their oldest language, this word means ground or soil. It is a humble name for a world that has produced such a remarkable species. They are ready to join the stars. Whether the stars are ready for them is another question entirely. The council debated for 3 more months before making their decision. In the end, they voted to offer humanity membership with restrictions. The humans accepted immediately, perhaps too immediately. But by then, Keth Marai had returned to her own world. Her mission was complete. She had done what she was sent to do. She told herself that she had given the council an accurate picture of humanity. She told herself that the truth was all that mattered. But deep in her heart, she knew she had missed something important, something that would change everything. She just did not know what it was. Not yet. 50 years passed. For the Galactic Imperium, 50 years was nothing. Some species lived for thousands of years. Civilizations rose and fell over millions. 50 years was like a single breath in the life of the galaxy. But for humans, 50 years was everything. In that time, humanity spread across a dozen star systems. They built colonies on worlds that other species had ignored. They terraformed planets that seemed impossible to change. They thrived in environments that would have killed other beings. The Imperium watched this expansion with a mixture of amazement and concern. The restrictions placed on humanity had slowed their growth, but they could not stop it entirely. Humans were simply too creative, too determined, too stubborn to be contained. And through it all, they remained peaceful. This surprised everyone. The council had expected humanity to cause problems. They had expected border disputes and trade conflicts and perhaps even small wars. They had prepared contingency plans for human aggression. None of those plans were needed. Human diplomats were skilled and reasonable. Human merchants were fair in their dealings. Human scientists shared their discoveries freely. Human artists created works that were enjoyed across the galaxy. Perhaps we were wrong about them, some council members began to say. Perhaps they have truly changed. Others were not convinced. 50 years is nothing. They are biding their time, waiting for the right moment. The right moment for what? No one had an answer to that question. Ambassador Keth Marai had retired from active service, but she still followed human affairs closely. She was now one of the leading scholars on human culture and behavior. Her books were required reading for anyone who wanted to work with humanity. She still felt that the humans were hiding something. But after 50 years of peaceful cooperation, even she began to doubt herself. Maybe I was wrong, she said to herself one evening. Maybe they really are just what they appear to be. She was about to learn how wrong that thought was. The warning came from the outer rim of the galaxy. A small observation post detected something strange in the void between galaxies. A disturbance in space itself. A darkness that swallowed light. At first, the scientists thought it was a natural phenomenon. A black hole, perhaps, or some kind of cosmic storm. They sent probes to investigate. The probes never returned. More probes were sent. More disappeared. The Imperium began to take the matter seriously. And then the first images came back. Ships. Thousands of ships. Millions of ships. A fleet so vast it darkened the stars themselves. They were coming from the void between galaxies, moving slowly but steadily toward the Imperium. The Council convened an emergency session. The images were displayed on the great screen in the center of the chamber. "What are they?" High Chancellor Marath Prime asked. He was very old now, held together by life support technology, but his mind was still sharp. The chief scientist, a being made of living metal named Ferrix 9, stepped forward. "They are called the Wraith Swarm, High Chancellor. According to our oldest records, they appeared once before, 10,000 years ago, before the Imperium was founded. What happened? They destroyed everything. The civilization that existed before us was completely wiped out. Only scattered survivors remained. We are the descendants of those survivors." A murmur of fear swept through the council chamber. 10,000 years was ancient history. Most species had forgotten that anything existed before the Imperium. "How did those survivors escape?" someone asked. "They did not fight," Ferrix 9 said. "They ran. They hid. The Wraith Swarm consumes everything in its path, but eventually it moves on. Our ancestors waited in hidden places until the swarm passed." "Then we must do the same," a council member said. "Begin evacuation procedures immediately." The High Chancellor raised his hand for silence. "How long do we have?" "At their current speed, they will reach the outer colonies in 3 years, the core worlds in 5. That is enough time. Begin the evacuations. All non-essential personnel should be moved to the hidden sectors. Military forces will maintain a defensive perimeter to slow their advance." The council began to disperse. Plans were already being made. Ships were being prepared. The Imperium had known this day might come eventually. They were not unprepared, but one voice stopped them. "Excuse me." Everyone turned. The speaker was the human ambassador, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen. She was small compared to most of the beings in the chamber, but she stood straight and spoke clearly. "You said we will run and hide," she said. "I want to make sure I understand correctly. The entire Galactic Imperium is going to abandon their homes and flee from this enemy." "That is correct," the High Chancellor said. "It is the only way to survive." "And no one is going to fight?" The chamber fell silent. The question seemed absurd. "Fight the Wraith Swarm?" Ferrix 9 said. "Ambassador Chen, you do not understand. The swarm cannot be fought. They adapt to every weapon. They consume everything they encounter. They have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. I understand what you are saying. I am asking if anyone has tried. The records from 10,000 years ago indicate that some species did attempt to resist. They were all destroyed." Sarah Chen nodded slowly. "And in 10,000 years, no one has tried again? No one has developed new weapons or new strategies? What would be the point? The swarm is inevitable. Fighting them is suicide." The human ambassador looked around the chamber. Hundreds of species, representing thousands of worlds, millions of years of combined history. All of them were accepting defeat without even trying. She smiled. It was not a happy smile. "I need to speak with my government," she said. Sarah Chen returned to the human embassy and sent an encrypted message to Earth. The response came within hours. The human president, a man named Marcus Webb, appeared on her screen. Behind him, she could see other officials moving rapidly. "We got your report," President Webb said. "The Wraith Swarm. It is real? It is real, and the Imperium is planning to evacuate. They will not even try to fight." President Webb was quiet for a moment. His face showed no fear, only thought. "How long do we have?" 3 years before they reach the outer colonies. 5 before the core worlds. That is not much time. "No, sir, it is not." The president leaned forward. "Ambassador, do you believe the swarm can be defeated?" Sarah Chen had been thinking about this question since she left the council chamber. She had reviewed the ancient records. She had studied what little was known about the swarm. I do not know, she said honestly. The Imperium believes it is impossible, but the Imperium has never really tried. They have accepted defeat as inevitable. That is not how we think. No, sir, it is not. President Webb nodded slowly. Contact the council. Tell them humanity will not be evacuating. Tell them we intend to fight. The announcement sent shockwaves through the Imperium. The humans were going to fight the Wraith Swarm, the species that had been part of the Imperium for only 50 years, the species that the Council had wanted to quarantine or destroy. They were going to stand against an enemy that had wiped out entire civilizations. Many thought it was suicide. Some thought it was brave but foolish. A few secretly hoped the humans knew something they did not. Ambassador Keth Marai requested a meeting with Sarah Chen. The two women sat in the human embassy, surrounded by strange human decorations and the smell of human food. Why? Keth Marai asked simply. Why are you doing this? Sarah Chen considered the question. Do you know what happened the last time our species faced extinction? You have faced extinction multiple times. True, but I am thinking of a specific time. About 80 years before we joined the Imperium, we discovered that an asteroid was on course to hit our planet. Not a large one, but large enough to cause serious damage. I remember reading about this. You diverted it somehow. We did, but that is not my point. My point is what happened when we discovered the threat. We did not run. We did not hide. We built ships and flew out to meet it. We faced it head on. Because you had no choice, there was nowhere to run. There is always somewhere to run, Ambassador. Space is infinite. We could have loaded our best and brightest onto ships and fled to the stars, leaving the rest to die. Some people suggested exactly that. But you did not. No, we stayed and fought. Not because we had no choice, but because that is who we are. Humans do not run from danger. We run toward it. Keth Marai's skin shifted through several colors. That is admirable, but admiration will not save you from the swarm. Sarah Chen smiled again. This time there was something dangerous in her expression. Ambassador Keth Marai, I need to tell you something. Something that the Imperium has not been told. Something we have been keeping secret for 50 years. Keth Marai felt a chill run through her body. The secret, the thing she had always known was there. What is it? When we joined the Imperium, we agreed to certain restrictions. Limits on our weapons, controls on our technology. We accepted these restrictions because we wanted peace. We wanted to prove that we could be trusted. I remember. What the Imperium does not know is that we never stopped developing weapons. We simply did it in secret. Keth Marai stared at the human. You have been preparing for war this whole time? Not war, survival. We knew that something like this could happen eventually. We knew that the galaxy is a dangerous place. So while we smiled and traded and made friends, we also built. Built what? Sarah Chen stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars shone peacefully. Come with me to Earth, she said. I will show you what humanity can do when survival's on the line. The journey to Earth took 3 days. Keth Marai spent most of that time in shock, processing what she had heard. The humans had been hiding their true capabilities. For 50 years, they had lied to the Council, lied to her, lied to everyone. But as her initial shock faded, something else took its place. Hope. If the humans had been preparing all this time, perhaps they really could fight the swarm. Perhaps there was a chance. When they arrived at Earth, Sarah Chen took her to a facility hidden deep beneath a mountain. Security was extreme. Even Keth Marai, with all her diplomatic clearances, had to pass through multiple checkpoints. Finally, they reached a vast underground chamber. What Keth Marai saw there made her freeze in her tracks. Weapons. Thousands of weapons. Weapons that the Imperium had banned. Weapons that the Imperium had never even imagined. Kinetic bombardment platforms capable of accelerating projectiles to near light speed. Self-replicating drone factories that could build an entire fleet in days. Biological agents engineered to target specific genetic patterns. Gravity manipulation devices that could crush matter into nothing. And more. So much more. You told us to integrate peacefully, Sarah Chen said, watching the ambassador's reaction. You did not say we could not prepare for the worst. Kethmarai turned to face the human. This is enough to conquer the Imperium. Yes, it probably is. But that was never our intention. We built these weapons for defense, not conquest. We built them for exactly this situation. A threat so great that nothing else could stop it. And you think these weapons can stop the swarm? Sarah Chen's eyes were hard. I think they give us a chance, and a chance is all we have ever needed. The war was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn what humanity was truly capable of. Some discoveries are made in laboratories or libraries. Some are made on battlefields, and some are made in the heart when beings face the darkness and choose to stand against it. The Imperium was about to make all three kinds of discoveries. They were about to learn that the species they had feared was actually their greatest hope. But first they would have to watch humanity fight, and what they saw would change their understanding of the universe forever. The Wraith Swarm was coming, humanity was waiting, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first battle took place in a system called Kepler's Rest. It was a small colony on the edge of human space, home to only 50,000 people. When the evacuation orders came from the Imperium, the colonists were given 3 days to leave. They refused. Instead, the colonists sent a message to Earth. We will stand. Send us weapons. The weapons arrived within a week, not from Earth, but from hidden bases scattered throughout human space. Bases that the Imperium had never known existed. The Imperium watched in confusion as human ships began gathering at Kepler's Rest. Military vessels of designs they had never seen. Cargo ships carrying strange equipment. Transport ships filled with soldiers. What are they doing? Council members asked. Do they not understand that the swarm cannot be stopped? Admiral Thomas Reed understood perfectly. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had spent 40 years preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now that war was here. All ships report status, he said from the bridge of his flagship, the Unbroken Will. The reports came in. 200 warships in fighting condition, 10,000 combat drones ready for deployment, 50 orbital defense platforms online. Ground forces dug in on every planet and moon. It was not much against a swarm that numbered in the millions, but it was a start. Sir, his tactical officer said, we are detecting swarm ships entering the system. How many? First wave appears to be approximately 10,000 units. Admiral Reed nodded. The swarm was testing them, sending a small force to see what they were facing. Launch drones, engage at maximum range. The battle began. Imperium observers had been sent to watch the engagement. They expected to witness a massacre. They expected to see human ships destroyed in minutes, just as every other species had been destroyed when they tried to fight the swarm. What they saw instead made them question everything they knew about warfare. The human drones hit first, 10,000 small craft, each carrying a payload of kinetic weapons. They struck the swarm ships at incredible velocities, punching holes through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. The swarm adapted quickly. Their ships began producing countermeasures, energy fields that deflected the incoming projectiles. The humans adapted faster. Within hours, they had modified their drones to carry a different type of weapon, plasma charges that bypassed the energy fields. The swarm ships began to explode. The swarm adapted again. They changed their formation, spreading out to minimize damage from area weapons. The humans adapted again. They switched to precision strikes, targeting the command nodes that coordinated swarm movement. Confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Back and forth. Attack and counterattack. Adaptation and response. The Imperium observers could not believe what they were seeing. The swarm had always been one step ahead. Every weapon used against them had been neutralized within days. No species had ever been able to keep up, but the humans were not just keeping up. They were winning. How is this possible? One observer asked. How are they adapting so quickly? The answer was simple, though the observer did not understand it. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had developed thousands of different weapons, thousands of different strategies, thousands of different ways to kill and destroy. The swarm had never faced anything like it. They were used to fighting species that had one approach to war, species that tried the same thing over and over until they died. Humans did not work that way. When one approach failed, they tried another, and another, and another. They were creative in destruction in a way that horrified and amazed the galaxy. The first wave of the swarm was destroyed in 3 days. Admiral Reed did not celebrate. He knew this was only the beginning. "Status report," he ordered. "We lost 40 ships and approximately 3,000 drones. Enemy losses are confirmed at over 9,000 units. Repair and resupply. The next wave will be larger." It was. The second wave numbered 50,000 ships. Behind them, more swarm forces were gathering, millions more. But humanity was also gathering its forces. Across human space, a transformation was taking place. The peaceful civilization that the Imperium had known for 50 years was disappearing. In its place, something else was emerging. Factories that had produced consumer goods now produced weapons. Scientists who had studied the stars now studied ways to destroy them. Artists who had created beauty now created propaganda to inspire and motivate. The humans called this total war. It was a concept that had no translation in most Imperium languages. The idea that an entire civilization could dedicate itself completely to fighting, that every person, every resource, every thought could be directed toward a single goal. Production numbers that would have taken the Imperium decades to achieve were reached in months. New weapons were designed, tested, and deployed within weeks. Training programs turned civilians into soldiers in days. The Imperium sent observers to human worlds. What they saw disturbed them deeply. "They have changed," one observer reported. "The humans I knew are gone. In their place are warriors. Every single one of them. Men and women, young and old. They are all preparing to fight." "This level of mobilization must be causing social collapse," a council member said. "Their economy cannot sustain this." But the observer shook his head. "That is the strange thing. Their society has not collapsed. It has become more organized, more efficient. They have created new systems to manage resources and personnel. They are functioning better than they ever did in peacetime." This made no sense to the council. In Imperium history, total war had always led to collapse. Species that dedicated everything to fighting destroyed themselves. It was considered a natural law. Humans did not care about natural laws. "We are a species of crisis," President Webb explained to the council via video link. "We perform poorly when things are easy. We become lazy, distracted, divided. But when we face a real threat, we come together. We become focused. We become dangerous." "This cannot be sustainable," the High Chancellor said. "It does not need to be sustainable. It only needs to last long enough." "Long enough for what?" Webb smiled. "Long enough to win." The second wave hit Kepler's rest. This time, the battle lasted 2 weeks. Human losses were heavier, but swarm losses were heavier still. The third wave came soon after, and the fourth, and the fifth. Each time, the swarm sent more ships. Each time, humanity found new ways to destroy them. The observers began to understand something that shocked them to their core. Humanity was not just fighting the swarm. They were studying them, learning from them. Every battle provided new information about swarm biology, swarm tactics, swarm weaknesses, and humanity was using that information to create weapons specifically designed to kill swarm. 6 months after the first battle, human scientists unveiled their greatest achievement. They called it the Harvester Protocol. It was a biological weapon, a virus engineered to target swarm genetic code. It spread through swarm ships like fire, killing the living organic components that made up their technology. The Imperium was horrified. Biological weapons were banned under the oldest and most sacred laws of civilized conduct. No species had used them in thousands of years. "This is barbarism," council members said. "This is evil." Admiral Reed responded to these accusations with cold practicality. "The swarm has killed trillions of beings. They will kill trillions more if we do not stop them. We did not choose this war, but we will finish it." "You are becoming like them," one alien ambassador said. "You are becoming monsters." "Perhaps, but we will be living monsters, and you will be alive to judge us." The Harvester Protocol was deployed. It spread through the swarm fleet like a plague. Millions of enemy ships died in their own corridors, their organic systems rotting from within. For the first time, the swarm stopped advancing. They pulled back, regrouping, trying to adapt to this new threat. Human scientists were already working on the next weapon. And the next, and the next. "We will not give them time to adapt," Admiral Reed declared. "We will hit them with everything we have all at once. They have never faced this before. They have never faced a species that fights with every part of itself." The Imperium began to understand what they were witnessing. This was not just a war. This was evolution in action. Humanity was evolving in real time, changing itself to become the perfect weapon against the swarm. Some found this inspiring. Others found it terrifying. "What happens when the war is over?" one observer asked. "What happens to this species of warriors? Will they return to being peaceful, or will they turn their weapons on us?" No one had an answer. The war continued. Months turned into years. The swarm kept coming. Humanity kept fighting. There were losses, terrible losses. Entire colonies wiped out before reinforcements could arrive. Ships destroyed by the thousands. Soldiers killed by the millions. But humanity did not break. Every loss made them more determined. Every death made them more angry. "We do not know how to surrender," President Webb said in a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. "We have tried to teach ourselves a skill. We have tried to learn when to give up, when to accept defeat. We cannot do it. It is not in our nature. We will fight until we win, or until there is no one left to fight. There is no middle ground." The swarm had never encountered this before. Every species they had faced had eventually given up, had fled or surrendered or simply died in despair. But humans did not despair. They just got angrier. 2 years into the war, the tide began to turn. Human forces had pushed the swarm back from Kepler's rest. New colonies were being defended successfully. The enemy was losing ships faster than they could replace them. And then the humans did something that no species had ever done before. They went on the offensive. A massive fleet, larger than anything the Imperium had ever seen, launched from human space. It was heading not for a defensive position, but for the swarm itself, for the heart of their invasion fleet. "They are insane," a council member said. "They are throwing away their victory." Admiral Reed stood on the bridge of the Unbroken Will, leading the attack personally. "All ships prepare for engagement," he ordered. "Today we take the fight to them. Today we show them what humanity can do." The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. Human ships crashed into the swarm fleet like a fist into a wall. They used weapons that the galaxy had never seen. They employed tactics that had never been tried. And they won. When the battle ended, the main swarm fleet was destroyed. Not defeated, not driven back, destroyed. Millions of enemy ships reduced to floating debris. The cost was enormous. Half the human fleet was gone. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were dead. But humanity did not mourn. They cheered. Because they had proven something. The swarm could be beaten. The enemy that had terrified the galaxy for 10,000 years could be killed. And humanity was just getting started. The message spread across the galaxy. To every species that had hidden in fear. To every world that had prepared for evacuation. To every being that had accepted extinction as inevitable. The message was simple. We are coming, and we will finish this. Some heard the message and felt hope for the first time in years. Others heard it and felt a different emotion entirely. Fear, not fear of the swarm, fear of the humans, because the galaxy was beginning to understand something important, something that would change everything. The humans had been holding back. Everything they had shown the Imperium over 50 years was just a fraction of their true power. The war had forced them to reveal themselves, and what they revealed was terrifying. Not because they were violent. The galaxy had always known that humans were violent. What was terrifying was something else entirely. Something that made the most advanced species in the Imperium feel like children. The humans had not just built weapons to fight the swarm. They had built weapons to fight anything, everything. They had prepared for every possible threat, every possible enemy, every possible apocalypse. They were not just warriors. They were survivors on a cosmic scale. And now the galaxy had to decide what to do about it. The hunt for the Wraith Swarm lasted 3 more years. Humanity did not simply defeat the enemy. They pursued them into the dark spaces between galaxies, into the void where no other species had ever traveled, into the unknown. Admiral Reed led the final campaign personally. Though he was old now and his body was failing, he refused to rest until the job was done. "We cannot leave survivors," he explained to the council when they asked why he was continuing the chase. If even one breeding colony survives, they will return. Maybe not in our lifetime. Maybe not in 1,000 years. But eventually, they will come back. You are proposing genocide, one council member said. The complete extinction of an entire species. I am proposing survival. Theirs or ours? I choose ours. The council debated. Some argued that enough was enough. The swarm had been broken. The threat was over. There was no need for more killing. Others understood what Reed was saying. The swarm would never stop. They could not be negotiated with. They could not be contained. They could only be destroyed. In the end, humanity did not wait for the council to decide. They continued the hunt regardless. The final swarm breeding world was found in a system so far from the Imperium that light from its star would take 1,000,000 years to reach the nearest colony. It was a dark, cold place. The perfect hiding spot for the last survivors of a dying species. Admiral Reed stood on the bridge of the Unbroken Will and looked at the planet on his screen. Billions of swarm creatures lived on its surface. They were building new ships, preparing to return. Target all population centers, he ordered. Prepare orbital bombardment. His tactical officer hesitated. Sir, this will kill billions of beings. Even if they are enemies, is this right? Reed was quiet for a long moment. He thought about everyone who had died in this war, human and alien alike. He thought about the civilizations destroyed 10,000 years ago. He thought about the future generations who would never have to face this threat. No, he said finally, it is not right, but it is necessary. Sometimes there is a difference. The bombardment began. It lasted for 3 days. When it was over, nothing was left alive on the planet's surface. The Wraith swarm was extinct. Reed died 6 months later, peacefully in his sleep. His last words were reportedly, "Is it done?" They told him it was done. He smiled and closed his eyes. The galaxy was saved, and the galaxy was terrified. The council convened in the largest session in Imperium history. Representatives from every species, every world, every faction gathered to discuss one question. What do we do about humanity? The debate lasted for weeks. Some argued that humanity should be celebrated as heroes. They had saved the galaxy. They had done what no other species could do. They deserved honor and gratitude. Others argued that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to continue. They had weapons that could destroy entire species. They had shown they were willing to use those weapons. What would stop them from turning those weapons on the Imperium? They have committed genocide, one speaker said. Yes, it was against an enemy, but it proves they are capable of such acts. Today it was the swarm. Tomorrow it could be us. They saved us, another replied. Without them, we would all be dead. Saved us from what? A threat that comes once every 10,000 years? We could have hidden, waited for it to pass. Instead, we now live alongside a species that has proven it can wipe out entire civilizations. You would rather have faced the swarm alone? I would rather face no threat at all, and right now humanity is a threat. The human delegation listened to these arguments in silence. Their new ambassador, a woman named Dr. Lisa Park, had replaced Sarah Chen after the war. She was young but experienced, having served as a diplomat on 3 different alien worlds. When the council finally called on her to speak, she stood calmly and addressed the assembly. I understand your fears, she began. I would be afraid too in your position. We have shown you what we can do, and what we can do is terrifying. She paused, looking around the vast chamber. But I want you to consider something. 50 years ago, when we first joined the Imperium, you feared us because of our history, our wars, our violence. You thought we would bring that violence to the stars. We did not. For 50 years, we lived in peace. We traded and cooperated and made friends. We could have built our weapons in secret and used them to conquer you. We did not. We built them for defense. Only for defense. Now you fear us again, this time because you have seen what those weapons can do. But I ask you, what would you have had us do? Let the swarm destroy everything? Die quietly and politely because fighting back might make you uncomfortable? Her voice grew stronger. Humanity does not know how to die quietly. We fight. That is what we do. It is what we have always done. And yes, sometimes our fighting is ugly. Sometimes it is terrible. but sometimes it is necessary. The swarm was necessary. They would have killed everyone, every species in this chamber, every child on every world. They showed no mercy because they had none to show. So we showed them none either. You can fear us for that, you can hate us, but you should also thank us, because you are alive to feel fear and hate. Without us, you would be nothing but dust. The chamber was silent. Ambassador Keth Marai requested permission to speak. She was very old now, nearly at the end of her long life, but her voice was still clear. I have spent 200 years studying humanity, she said. I have watched them change from a primitive species to a galactic power. I have seen their worst and their best. When I first met them, I was afraid. They were violent and unpredictable. They made no sense to me. Now I understand them, not completely. I do not think any alien can ever completely understand humans, but I understand enough. They are not evil. They are not monsters. They are survivors. Everything they do to survive. Their violence, their creativity, their determination. All of it comes from one source, the desperate need to continue existing. And here is what I have learned. That need does not just apply to themselves. When humanity joins something larger than itself, that thing becomes part of what they need to protect. 50 years ago, they joined the Imperium. The Imperium became part of their tribe, part of what they would fight to protect. That is why they did not evacuate when the swarm came. They could have. They could have taken their weapons and fled to the far reaches of space. They would have survived. They are very good at surviving. But they did not run. They stayed and fought, not just for themselves, for all of us, for species that had treated them with suspicion and fear, for worlds that had tried to restrict and contain them. They fought for us because we are theirs now. We are part of humanity's family, and humans will do anything to protect their family. She looked around the chamber, her eyes settling on species after species. You want to know if humanity is a threat? Yes, they are. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But they are our threat, our protectors, our family. The question is not whether we should fear them. The question is whether we trust them, whether we believe that their loyalty is real. I believe it is. I have seen it. I have watched humans die for beings they had never met, simply because those beings were part of the Imperium. That is not the behavior of conquerors. That is the behavior of guardians. So here is my recommendation. Do not try to contain humanity. Do not try to limit them. That path leads only to conflict. Instead, embrace them. Make them true partners. Let them protect us, not because we force them to, but because they want to. I have faith in humanity. After 200 years of study, I have faith. They have earned it. The debate continued for 3 more months. In the end, the council voted. Humanity was granted full partnership in the Galactic Imperium. All restrictions were lifted. Human representatives were given seats on the High Council. Human technology was shared freely across the galaxy. Some species protested. Some refused to accept the decision. A few even threatened to leave the Imperium entirely. But most understood the truth. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. There was no going back. The only way forward was together. 1,000 years later, the Galactic Imperium still stood. It had grown larger than ever before. New species had joined. New worlds had been settled. The old fears had mostly faded, replaced by a new understanding. Humanity had become the guardians of the galaxy, not through conquest but through choice. They patrolled the borders. They responded to threats. They protected the weak. Some called them heroes. Others called them necessary evils. Most simply called them human. The official histories recorded that humanity had saved the Imperium from the race swarm. They told stories of brave admirals and brilliant scientists and determined soldiers. The unofficial histories told a different story. They told of a species that should have destroyed itself 100 times over, a species that had every reason to give up and every excuse to fail. A species that had looked into the darkness again and again and somehow found the strength to keep going. They told of a species that was violent and gentle, cruel and compassionate, terrifying and inspiring. A species that made no sense and yet somehow made everything work. They told of a species that found meaning not in conquering the galaxy, but in protecting it. that found purpose not in ruling others, but in serving something greater than itself. They told of humanity, and across the stars in quiet moments, beings of 1,000 different species whispered a piece of wisdom that had become common knowledge throughout the Imperium. Never threaten what a human loves, because there is nothing in the universe they will not do to protect it. No weapon they will not build, no enemy they will not face, no sacrifice they will not make. They will burn stars and shatter worlds. They will tear apart the fabric of space and time. They will challenge the laws of nature itself, and they will win. Not because they are the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because they refuse to lose, because giving up is not something they know how to do. Some called this stubbornness. Some called this madness. The humans just called it being human. In a small park on Earth, in a city that had existed before humans reached the stars, there stood a statue. It was simple, just a human figure looking up at the sky with one hand raised. The inscription at the base read, "For those who came before and those who will come after, we will not let you down." Children played around the statue, laughing and running, unaware of the weight of history they carried. Their parents watched them with smiles, knowing that the future was bright. Somewhere far away in the darkness between galaxies, something stirred. A new threat, perhaps. A new challenge for humanity to face. The humans would be ready. They were always ready because that was what they did. That was who they were. Survivors, fighters, dreamers. Humanity. The story of the galaxy was just beginning, and humanity would be there to write every chapter, together with their alien friends, together with their adopted family, together with a universe that had once feared them and now relied on them. The stars waited, and humanity answered their call. Always.